we're recording.
Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to the September 19th, 2023 Curriculum Subcommittee of the Brookline Public Schools School Committee. We have a full agenda, and we do have a stop time at 4:30. So I think we're just going to start. And if not committee members, but if there are other people who have questions, if they would hold the questions till the end, that would be helpful. And we will cover as much as we can in our hour and a half. So Natalia, welcome. We just started, so that's great. And Jody, am I turning this over to you?
Yes, please. I am going to share my screen. All right, please tell me everybody is seeing what looks like a slideshow. Awesome.
Mm-hmm.
So we do have a very packed agenda today. I want to review. Some of these are pretty quick items. Others will probably linger on a little bit longer. I want to give a quick overview of how many students we serve during our summer programming, some updates on our opening days, our goals for the Office of Teaching and Learning this year, and then unembargoed at noon today for data nerds like I am were our MCAS scores. So I'm able to share those with you today and walk you through a bit of a storyline that they tell us. So that's the plan. It is going to be a pretty full marathon session, but let's get started. So this summer, we served about 210 fewer students than we generally do in our summer programs, due in a large part to a decrease in enrollments in the base and Smart Summers program for our students. I'm in the process of trying to uncover why that number was so much smaller than it has been in the past, but we did serve 1,151 students, which I think is really wonderful in a community this size, that our students had all of these opportunities over the summer that they could take advantage of. So I just wanted to share those numbers with you, let you know that we were down a little bit on the base and Smart Summers side, but we were pretty steady with our other programs. Any questions from the committee about that? Helen?
A thought about base. It might be that more kids went to summer camp, sleepaway and stuff like that, maybe, than the summer past when COVID might have been more of an issue.
That's a great thought, and actually one I hadn't thought of, but definitely a possibility.
I would look back a couple years more to see what the trend really is. Look pre-COVID, during the COVID years. One summer we offered things for free for anybody who wanted to sign up. So we had a huge attendance. I don't remember which summer that was.
Just making a note for myself. Thank you, Helen. So opening days, here are some wonderful pictures. I can't take photo credits. These are Dr. Guillory's pictures, but as you can see, it was a busy start to the school year with teachers learning down here at Runkle, over here at Lincoln. So the students are happy, the teachers all seemed happy. It was really a joyful feeling to get back into the swing of things. We dealt with the hot temperatures as best we could. Our buildings did get quite warm, many classrooms reaching high 80s. and 90 degrees with that hot spell. And our buildings very much hold the heat. I was actually shocked. It was a much cooler day, and I was over in the old part of the high school, and I was still sweating when I was over there. But our teachers and our students powered through, and I'm really thankful and grateful to all of them for doing that. All right. A hot topic lately has been class size over at the high school. And I wanted to give the committee an update of where we are. These aren't consecutive years because we don't have 1920 and 21-22 because they were so impacted by COVID. But as you can see, we're currently running quite a few classes that are over the number over 25. We're at 104. This is up from last year where it was 84. So we're up about 20 sections there. We've almost doubled. We've over a little bit more than doubled classes that are over 28. And we are now up to 22 classes that are up over 30. The enrollment for this year at 2,178 is the latest info that's available in our student information system. The other total enrollment numbers I had gathered from DESE, that's why it has the asterisk, because this is how many we had today. We've had 2 withdrawals since I looked at it yesterday. We were at 2,180. So this is a fluid number, especially at the beginning of the year. But this is where we're at. I imagine that the committee might have some questions. I don't have the greatest of answers for these as we're talking about them, but I'll be happy to try to answer. So, everybody, Suzanne.
Okay, thank you. So I'm just wondering, Jody, you may not know this, but I know in years past, if a class hit a cap, then it was full and they did not enroll additional students. So you were denied access to that class that year. And I'm wondering, do we still do that? Or is that for some classes and not others? Or is it just as many as sign up are allowed to come in?
I actually do know the answer. There's a process for lifting the cap on classes where the curriculum coordinator goes to the principals and says, hey, we have this many students that are interested in taking this class. Can we lift the cap on that class? And so what you're seeing here is the result of lifting the cap on many classes so that our students are able to take the full range of courses that they want to.
Thank you. Yeah, who do you see? I see Stephen next. I don't know.
I see Stephen too.
Okay, Stephen.
Thanks. 2 questions. One, just for clarity. So the growth enrollment is only 90 students. Why would that push an additional 20 classrooms over the 30-person limit? That seems really unlikely to me. That suggests that that just suggests a really unlikely distribution to me, doesn't it? That there's a lot of classrooms that are right on the cusp, and that 90 students were distributed right to those students that went from 29 to 30. No,
I would agree with you. And what we're trying to get the answers to are exactly how many FTEs, if any, were cut last year. So we do know that we cut 4 paraprofessional FTEs. That was part of our budget. We're not sure what I'm not sure about. I'm sure somebody is sure about it. What I'm trying to track down are the if any, number of teachers that
Great.
we may have had to reassign, and I can get back to the committee at a later date with that.
Thanks, Jody. That would be really helpful to see alongside total enrollment, the change in ratios. So then the big follow-up question is, are we doing anything to mitigate this? Because 22 classrooms over 30 seems not optimal.
We've talked about the possibility of approaching the school committee for additional FTE, but that would be very disruptive to student scheduling right now. In order to do that, it would require almost, no matter what you add right now, would require almost a revamp of the entire high school schedule and be very disruptive. So we're not considering that as a mitigation strategy right now.
Okay. So I'll just register alarm at the trajectory from 2 to 22. We definitely should mitigate it for next semester, right?
Yes.
I'll let other committee members ask their questions.
Thanks, Stephen. I see Natalia next. Susan, is that who you have?
That's who I have next, yeah.
Thank you. And I think I'm sort of echoing Stephen's alarm, not only on the 30 plus, but also the 28 plus. But I wanted to understand, because it's sort of going back to what Stephen just said, are some of these semester classes, meaning we could mitigate mid-year, it's just a semester? And are there other ideas, paying teachers more, some sort of bonus pay, getting like a intern or a para, so there can be somebody in the classroom to help answer questions? Like, is there something for this year for this semester? And then I don't understand what class refers to. Is it the same teacher? Like, is it 22? Like, how many teachers are being impacted? Or could it be like, we heard from a few teachers, but that have multiple classes that are being impacted. So could one teacher have like 4 of these huge classes versus this is 22 individuals that we're talking about? Can I understand a little bit more of that?
Yeah. It could be more than one teacher. This is referring to sections that are over. It's primarily in our world language department is particularly hit with some of these high classes. Some of our electives, our astronomy class, our journalism class is another one that is oversubscribed right now. I think there are some mitigation strategies that, the committee could consider, whether that be hiring, a para for sections, some building paras for sections that are this high. The problem is filling any new positions that we add, and we have many paraprofessional vacancies that currently exist still in the district that we had already planned and budgeted for. So I think all of us are going to have to think pretty creatively about ways to mitigate this and work with Anthony and his team on what makes the most sense for them.
Mariah? Oh, you know what, Mariah? I should have Helen go next because she's on the committee, then I'll come to you.
Sorry. Okay.
My fault. Yeah, Helen, I'll go to you, then Mariah.
I could allow her to go first if you want. I guess one of the things that I just want to make sure I'm correct about is that our standard classes are all under 25 and probably under 22 mostly, because we've always said, actually as a school committee, that those classes need much more individual attention than the honors and AP classes. So is that correct?
That is absolutely correct, Helen. Thank you for bringing that up. That remains the scheduling philosophy at the high school, that these are all higher level classes, not our college prep classes.
I mean, I too am concerned about this, and I think it's, not a good way to go, and that we should figure out to make sure for next year that this that this year is an anomaly. If you look back at previous years, this wasn't the case. Especially in 2017, 2018, where it was really, those are more, it makes sense. Sometimes you have a class with 25 or 26 because, you can't always, not everybody picks courses the way you want them to. And, but I think that's what we should be striving towards, that the over 30 is occasionally and very occasionally. And to figure out how to go about doing that is really, really an important, and then the high school is a big place. There's, it's a third of our enrollment. And so there has to be a way of thinking this through ahead of time. Also, partly it's to us to make sure that they know the budget ahead of time. So there's a lot of moving pieces here.
Yeah, this will be very important during the upcoming budget season, which I can't believe how quickly that will be starting already.
And I imagine some of these numbers will change too, because we don't know all the kids who have left the system. Kids don't tell us. And so that also kids drop courses. I think they have until maybe the end of the month to do that. So, many of these things may change. I mean, we may be back here next month and see different numbers. Certainly not higher, but, maybe lower. Okay, thank you.
Thanks, Helen.
Yeah, Mariah, your turn.
Thanks, Jody, for the presentation. It's very concerning. I have a question because I've heard that a building administrator, so take this for what it's worth, is hearsay, but I've heard that there were significant number, something like 200 kids who are hoping to take AP chemistry this year, and only around 90 of them were able to be placed. And I would imagine of the other large number of students, that there are many who are seniors for whom this is their only chance or their last chance to be able to take the AP courses that they didn't get into. So I guess my question is maybe threefold. I'll kind of go through it. I don't know how many parts there are to this, but what are we doing when we talk about disruption to schedules, but there are kids for whom a new section actually would be where they need to be placed, and they're in something else that's not what they need or want necessarily. How can we find opportunities, especially as you mentioned in the AP and honors, which are highly oversubscribed to, or even where there's kids who weren't even able to be placed beyond the caps that you mentioned earlier. They lifted the caps and they can't lift the caps high enough to make it happen. So what are we doing in terms of being able to open up new sections to be able to accommodate those kids who truly want or need to be in these AP courses? And how are we sort of working towards that goal, and how are we addressing, especially for the seniors for whom this actually makes a difference? And if we can't get them in, is there is that going to be handled when they're going and looking, if they're pursuing college, and it is a ding if you're not necessarily having an AP, but it's because they couldn't get in. It's not like some schools where APs aren't offered. This is a case where it is offered and it's not on their transcript.
So senior schedules for things like that are generally prioritized for scheduling. So somebody that's a senior that wanted AP Chem, for example, I'm just throwing that one out there, that wanted AP Chem would be more likely to get it than a junior that wanted it this year, so that they would have another bite at that apple. That I do know the question, the answer to. The first part of your question about how are we looking at this? Are we considering adding more sections? Anthony and I have been just missing each other all day, but I will get the answer to that for you.
Thanks. Just one quick follow-up, Suzanne. Do you know how many seniors were still unable to be placed though in AP classes?
I don't. I'll check that number, and I'm going to confirm or deny that rumor for you too about AP Chem.
Okay. And just in general, I mean, I think AP Chem, it might be true or not, but it sort of represents a larger issue, which is, we hold ourselves up as really having a tremendous course offering, and especially for these students, it's really critical. Whether it's chem, whether it's who knows what the topic is. There's so many APs that are offered. Thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you, Mariah.
Okay, so everybody's had a chance to ask one question or two or three. So don't panic. I'm gonna I've got a couple more hands back up, so we'll try to make this quick. Just remember, we have a lot to discuss. So I think it's good that Jody's getting all our questions, and do know that people can submit them, email, be in touch somehow. And so we will continue to have this conversation. I just want you to know that, because we could spend the whole hour and a half just on this, I'm sure. It is important, but we have world language coming up next that also will have a fair amount, plus MCAS conversation, plus the goals. So I'm going to go to Helen next, and then Stephen, and then we're probably going to ask Jody to wrap this up a little bit to see how she wants to go forward on this particular issue. Helen.
So I was just going to respond a little bit to Mariah. From what I know of the practice at the high school, dating back to the time when my kids were there, you ask for a class. If you're a freshman, sometimes you get it, sometimes you don't. Same thing with sophomores. By the time you're a senior, those schedules are usually done first. So those kids get in, and then they go down through the grades. So there is a logical process to it.
Oh, I know there's a logical process, but with 90 and 200, you might not make it.
Sometimes you may have conflicts with 2 APs you want to take, or 3 APs you want to take. That happens too. So anyway.
Thank you, Helen. Stephen?
I don't have a question. I just want to make a very brief comment, which is the total enrollment this year is a record enrollment for BHS. While we were talking, I just went to the DESE database, and it's surged past anything that BHS has had before. So I just want to note that going forward. Thanks.
Thanks, Stephen. And what I will do for the subcommittee is at our next meeting, I'll bring an update and have answers to all of your questions. I'll also respond to you in writing for those that I didn't have a completely satisfactory answer for.
And Jody, the subcommittee is obviously interested in this. I would imagine the entire school committee is interested in this topic. So it might be that you might be able to do an update with the whole committee.
Absolutely.
So we'll talk about that at docket, but I would guess that the entire, or you can do it in a memo if that seems a better way for you. But I would guess that all school committee members are interested in this topic, and I guess it would be fair to say that we hope this is an anomaly and a quirk for the year. But if this were to be a trend, there would be lots of concerns about that. So I imagine you got that message fairly loud and clear, but I just wanted to kind of summarize it for you. And we look forward to future emails, letters, memos, presentations, whatever that might be. Okay.
Thank you.
Okay.
All right, world language. So as you may have read in the Brookline News, we were able, I wouldn't exactly call it a hiring spree, but we were able to do some significant work with hiring over the summer. I think our outreach and our really trying purposefully to get teachers to come on board paid off. And so we're now able to fully staff our K-8 program at Baker, Driscoll, Heath, and Lincoln. We're able to staff 1 through 8 at Florida, Ruffin, Ridley, 3 through 8 at Lawrence and Runkle, and 4 through 8 over at Pierce. there was grave concern at the beginning of the year, at the beginning of the summer, in the middle of the summer, that we wouldn't be able to staff our French program, thus limiting choice for our middle school students where French is an option, but we were able to fully staff our French classes, which is something that we hadn't had any candidates for, and we ended up getting a stellar retired teacher who's filling one of our part-time openings, as well as people with experience that wanted to come to Brookline. So it's really been a very fortunate hiring season for us. That doesn't mean that we're done and that hiring is complete, because we haven't been able to fully restore K-8. So what you will see is we are still hiring. Hold on, let me click in here. We are still hiring. We have a couple of leaves coming up for very exciting and happy reasons. So we have already posted those vacancies. At least 2 of those don't start until December. We're very much trying to get ahead of the game there, even though December is coming rather quickly. And we still need some FTE at Lawrence, Runkle, FRR, in Pierce. So if you know anybody, these are all Spanish positions. If you know anybody that would be interested in a long-term sub position, we have 1 that's starting now, 2 that are starting in December, or you know anybody that's looking for a part-time teaching position, please let us know. We were able to take off 1 year only on most of our leaves, most of our postings, which we're hoping will help attract a wider pool of candidates as well. On the next school committee meeting on the 28th, we will be reviewing the full world language report at that time. And you will also hear from 3 teachers, a Spanish teacher, a French teacher, and a Chinese teacher that teach in the program. So my thinking right now is we've docketed an hour and a half for that. We'd have the teachers speak for a half hour. We would have Thomas Sauer from the University of Maryland, who did our review study, and then a half hour, because I know this is a very interesting topic for the school committee and community. Have a half hour for questions and answers that you can direct towards who the committee would like to direct that to. Any questions about this?
Stephen.
First of all, I think this is great news. Thank you for doing so much hiring, for restaffing so much of the world language program and going into elementary school. That must have been a lot of work. Thank you for doing so much work. My question for you is about, it's the same question I keep asking. I just want to know about how you've been thinking about the root causes of world language teachers leaving, which is, to my mind, still has a lot to do with the viability and difficulty of their schedule. So I continue to hear about world language teachers finding their schedules difficult, finding their schedules to be unnecessarily split, or to find it difficult to meet their duties if they're on different floors, if they have to attend to different grades. Can you say a little bit about that? I know there's a million things going on. I'm not expecting you to say we nailed it. I just want to know, to what extent have you been able to attend to that problem, and what is OTL's thinking to date about how to deal with that problem?
So right now, schedules at Ruff and Ridley are pretty tight, which is why you see so much FTE still listed. We're able to staff 1 through 8, but with the acknowledgement that it is a very tight and difficult schedule. Part of the issue around scheduling is just the structure of the program itself, where there's so many different size puzzle pieces. You know, our kindergarten students receive world language only twice a week for 30 minutes, as do most of our younger students. That increases as our students get older, but that results in teachers, in order to be full-time, having to teach a wide variety of grade levels if they're working with our lower elementary. So that's something, you know, that we really have to consider. There's one school in particular that's doing unique things with their schedule, and I believe that's probably the school that you're hearing about the split in grade levels, because we've really worked to try to keep things within grade level bands for teachers, so that we were reducing that going across grade levels. You know, it's still imperfect. We're still just trying to get back to a staffing level where we were last year, when there was still all these pain points around scheduling. So we're working really hard, but we haven't nailed it yet. You are absolutely right, Steve.
So thank you for that. So these positions, the desired hiring date is as soon as possible. Is January?
It's as soon as possible for most of them. For 2 of the leaves, the December to June one, we'd love to have somebody in place that we know is coming in, so they could do some overlap with the teacher that's there now. So, and then there's 1 leave that's already started, that's the Lawrence first leave that you see. That's September to October. There's a teacher that's out on a 1-month leave. We haven't been able to get a sub for that yet.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Helen?
This is thinking a little bit outside the box, but I'm wondering, have we thought about a visiting teacher, for instance, from Puerto Rico or from any other Spanish-speaking country? We do that with the Chinese teachers. Sometimes they're housed. They used to come with the Chinese exchange program, and we would house them in somebody's house here in Brookline. I mean, it's a lot of work, but it may, you know, especially from Puerto Rico, where there's not visa issues or anything like that, might be a way of getting some of these positions filled. At least the part-time ones, somebody who wants to come to the States for the winter. I'm not sure they want to, but you know, it could be, you know, an interesting, I mean, it might be an idea.
Yeah, Helen, thank you for that idea. I appreciate it.
That and graduate students.
Yes, we are trying to find the graduate students. They're just not materializing yet.
Yeah, but I think Puerto Rico might be an idea.
Yeah, might be. I like that.
Okay. I'm happy to help.
Thank you.
Helen, do you want to take on a part-time job? You know Spanish, you could.
I was almost thinking about that, but
Oh,
I'm
there you
not
go,
ready for
Jody. There you go.
There we go.
There you go.
I
love
didn't
that.
think to recruit from school committee.
I know. She speaks fluent, so.
Maybe
you
a
know.
substitute, but that's it.
Natalia.
I mean, with that, no jokes aside, have you thought about changing the requirements in terms of for short term? I don't know if you require teaching degrees, because I'm sure there are native Spanish parents, and like, is there something that can be done as a waiver short term to bring in, at least for the substitutes? Or maybe there already aren't that high requirements. I was just wondering what the requirements are. Do they have to have teaching degrees?
They do. They don't have to have Yes, they do have to have teaching certifications, not necessarily degrees. We, thanks to a suggestion that Mariah had made early on in this process, we actually changed the requirement from absolutely having to have a world language certification to simply having to have an elementary certification. And we have even hired people that have emergency licenses as well. We can't hire people without any licenses. We could going through the waiver process, but then there's also the quality of what students would be getting as well. So we're trying to balance all of the factors when we do that.
So I'm not seeing any more hands. As Jody said, this will be coming up September 28th when we look at the program review, which is not the same issue as staffing currently. However, as Stephen has pointed out many times, and others of us have as well, some of the issues around hiring are related to some of the challenges around the program. And so, so for now, we're trying to hire as many as we can. And thank you, Jody, for doing a great job so far. And then in addition to that, we will be taking the time, and you're going to see this if you did a sneak preview of the goals coming up. Again, looking at world language as one of our program reviews. We have that information that we got from the review by an outside party, but now we have to take it in and apply it and go through it and see how that will impact our program here in our schools.
Thank
So
you.
are there any other questions on this, comments? Okay. Thank you, Jody. We'll move
All
on.
right, moving on to the office. Oh, and before I move on, I want to say it was our spectacular principals that did all the hiring and made the magic happen. They are a terrific team. Moving on to OTL goals. There are 7 OTL goals that I have for the next year. The first, and I would love the subcommittee's feedback on these, is taken almost directly from our strategic plan, which is establish a scope and sequence in ELA and math that includes common assessments and accountability benchmarks. Manage and ensure compliance for all federal grants that serve as funding sources for the Office of Teaching and Learning. Those are primarily Title I, Title II, and Title III. Conduct a comprehensive review of the PSB English Language Arts program. Yep.
Remind us what Title I, II, and III are.
Title I is to help close the achievement gaps. We're a targeted assistance school. Title II is a professional development grant. It's for teacher development. And Title III is the grant that we use for our English language education program. We're going to do a comprehensive review of our ELA program. The RFP for that is out there already. Getting some nice anecdotal interest in that. And the fourth one for this page is leverage our child study teams to correct the disproportionality of students referred for special education evaluations. We're going to partner with the new Teacher Center on a grant that they have as well that uses liberatory design principles to help design the CST processes. So those are the first 4 goals. Any feedback or questions from the committee?
I just, Jody, on the first one, scope and sequence for ELA math and ELA and math, the common assessments. That's separate from the comprehensive review of the ELA programs.
Correct.
Will one inform the other or no?
Yes,
Oh,
yeah,
okay.
we'll probably, I'm thinking for ELA, we'll probably get about halfway through it, because we'll be working on that the second half of the year, once we have the review completed.
Okay, that makes
So-
sense to me. Mariah and then Helen.
I just wanted to ask if the common assessments means like formative things like regular tests, or if it means like dibbles, like what is the assessments you're referring to when you're talking about assessments?
It's a both and, Mariah. What I would like to do is, it's similar to our M-Class assessment. I'd like to have something similar in math, but we're not in a position right now to do that. So I met with Matt today, who's our curriculum coordinator, K-8 for math, and what we're going to do is identify some assessments from investigations 3 and that focus on the major work of the grade as identified by some of the, for lack of a better term, power standards. And we're going to use those as our common assessment and score and have teachers do some planning based on the results of those. For literacy right now, what we do have is the M-Class. That's something that needs, though, the assessment program is something that needs to be built out beyond just the M-Class, because that doesn't measure every area of reading. It's not a great comprehension measure for our students. Helen?
Thank you.
Oh, sorry. Thanks, Mariah.
So I'm reading that first goal and trying to understand it because it seems it's 2 parts. Is that correct? There's establish a scope and sequence in ELA and math.
Mhm.
And then there's also establishing common assessments and accountability benchmark. Is that true? Am I
That
reading
is
it
true.
correctly? Okay.
You're reading it correctly. The scope and sequence is something that the team has been working on for a couple of years. My goal is that it's almost there, is to bring the scope and sequence home. And then once we have that, you know, what we're teaching, when we're teaching it, to identify what are the common assessments that we're going to use and how will we know that our students are successful. And that'll tie in a little bit later when we talk about MCAS.
But okay, so I get all that, but then I look at the comprehensive review, and how do you envision that comprehensive review? Is it just an outside group? Is it, what will be the comprehensive review of ELA?
It'll be very similar to the other reviews. It'll be a university or a nationally recognized partner that will come in, and there's some specific questions that we're asking them to look at about how we're serving and meeting the needs of every student. Is our program robust? Is it representative of the students we serve? One of the questions that I really like that we put in it, and I think I want to thank Stephen for this because I think it was your question, is to what extent are families seeking outside resources for their students to help with literacy skills? So there's lots of questions that we're going to count on this assessment to answer. And hopefully it will do so.
So who will be working with this university group?
I will be, Michelle Herman will be, and Kristen Gray will be. Kristen is, the subcommittee may know or may not know that Joanna Lieberman has resigned. So Kristen Gray right now is filling that role, and we will start a search for a permanent ELA coordinator once we have the review done and we kind of have a sense of the scope of work, because we want to make sure we get the right person in place for the work that we need to do at this time.
But I imagine teachers will also be involved in
Oh,
this.
absolutely. There'll be focus groups. Thank you, Helen, for really getting at what you wanted to know. Yes, there will be
I'm
many.
just trying to understand it. I mean, in the past, we have done program reviews where it's been led by the district and there's been a group who's been involved with it, representing, parents, teachers, administrators, etc. But this sounds a little bit different.
Helen,
Yes.
the RFP for this review is posted on brooklinema.gov, and
Sorry, I
offers.
didn't see it.
No, it was just posted, but offers are asked to provide proposed methodologies. So presumably, some will propose more inclusive methodologies, some will propose other methodologies. So I think it very much depends on what the offerers propose and which of them are selected. So I think that's TBD, the answer to your question.
Okay, and the only other thought I had is that the program review is gonna take a while till if it's just posted the RFP,
It's supposed to be done by mid-January.
even though it hasn't been awarded.
That's right. It will be the deadline for submissions is the 28th of September, and it will be completed by, what is it, Jody? I think it's January 28th. Is that right?
Yeah, it's the week after the long weekend.
That's ambitious.
Well, Helen, we did this with world language. It
Yeah,
was
I
good.
know, and I thought it was a little bit quick. That's
Well, but
a little
They,
concerned.
they collected a lot of data in that short time, so,
Yeah.
because this is what they do if we go with somebody. who-
Yeah, no, and that's important. We want to get this, done, but we want to get it done right. Then the question becomes, this scope and sequence comes after the
Yes.
review? Okay, just wanted to make sure we weren't doing it the other way around.
No,
Okay,
definitely not.
perfect. Thank you.
Natalia?
I just had a very simple question as the newest member of this committee. These OTL goals, are they, is it basically highlighting where you're putting most of financial resources, and how flexible are they over the year? In the sense of, I heard Stephen say, how are we going to address the root causes of the world languages program? And clearly the review happened last year, but solutions to that is something that we are looking at. So are those like little goals, therefore they're not being highlighted here? Or I just wanted to understand what we're giving you feedback on, Jody.
Nope, world language is on the next page.
Oh, okay. There's more.
3 more
Okay.
goals to go.
Okay, good. I will wait then. Thank you.
Jody, I did have a question. I'm sorry, back on your last one. On the child study team, you said something about something.
Oh, liberatory design. So the
What's
new,
that? I'm sorry.
yeah, so it's a design process that really has breaking down barriers at its heart and center. And it's a relatively new field. New Teacher Center has received a grant in it that they asked us to be a partner with them as they do it. And it's really to identify multi-tiered systems of support, of which child study team will, of course, be part of.
Okay, thank you. That's a new term for me, so thank you.
It was a new one for me too.
Oh, okay. I'm not way behind then.
Nope.
I'm sorry, I have one more, if I can.
Go ahead, Helen.
We want to move on, but in the past, we used to have a person who was in charge of all grants and compliance, and but we don't now, do we?
We don't. We have Kelly Durgan, who is absolutely amazing at managing them and making sure that we get things in on time. But there's components. Title I has many, a myriad of components that go with it that, quite honestly, I'm going to be frank with this team, we haven't been doing as a district. So I want to make sure that we are, in fact, doing those things. There are things such as we're targeted assistance, which means we identify a certain group of students that we're working with. There should be a parent-family compact. There should be, similar to CPAC, there should be an advisory board. And we don't have those systems and structures currently in place at this time. So I want to make sure and bring us into compliance with doing that. This one mostly centers around Title I, though we submit all of the title grants together.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome. All right, final 3. Create and implement a robust sequence of professional development opportunities for district leaders to support their practice. This is my attempt to focus us. We're really working hard as the Office of Teaching and Learning to design relevant parallel professional development for our curriculum coordinators, our principals, and our vice principals, as well as our senior leadership team. And so we're working really hard to do that. And I'm anxious to report out to the committee on some of the things that we're doing. We've identified an instructional focus around questioning that we want to use. So I'm really excited about this work. Redesign the world language program to better meet the learning needs of all of our students. So Natalia, there's world language. I'm going to be looking, though, quite honestly, to the committee for some direction on this. What is it that the committee envisions for world language so that we know what we're redesigning towards in a way that makes sense? And then to create a clear set of middle school programming and scheduling guidelines. And this goes to what Stephen was talking about earlier, where there's one school, our schools, and I think we learned this last year from New Solutions, our schools have a variety of different schedules that they're running at the middle schools, and that our students in some cases are having very different experiences in the amount of minutes in core academics and in specials that they're getting. So we want to really define what the Brookline Middle School experience is and what are those programming and schedule guidelines so that we want to aspire to. The consultant that we're working with, New School Solutions. I always get the name wrong. The consultant that we're working with is clear that this may not be something that we hit in our first year. We may develop these guidelines and we may be able to get 75% of the way there. But through repeated budgeting cycles, we'll be able to get to 100% what we'd like for middle school for our students. So those are the 7 big goals. And to answer Natalia's question directly, these are the big buckets of work that we're going to be doing as the Office of Teaching and Learning. We try to make these realistic and also manageable with what needs to happen in the district, and to really look at high leverage areas for ourselves. Suzanne?
Yes, I had a couple comments, if you don't mind. So I have heard that the BEF has granted a grant, no, has given you a grant to do to attend the Jim Knight instructional coaching conference. And I just want to say I'm thrilled for you and for those who are going. I think he's really terrific, and I think it's really a great direction to go, instructional coaching. I'm wondering if you could just say a word how this fits into the district strategic plan.
Oh, very much does, actually. The professional development piece is almost taken directly, other than the fact that we're focusing on leaders for year 1, is taken directly from the strategic plan. The scope and sequence goal is verbatim from the strategic plan. The grant goal really goes under the fiscal systems and structures piece that we have. So all of these nest very nicely within the strategic plan.
And so could you just say another word about, I know that you've been meeting with central office and with our building administrators to come up with, next steps and also indicators on how we know if we're successful or not successful with these goals, I think, and with the strategic plan goals. And as you said, they overlap. Could you just say a word about that? Would you?
Yep. So we're doing some action planning around the strategic plan goals. I still need to do that with these goals as well. So that really looks at what are the sub-steps that go into realizing these larger goals? What is our focus going to be for year 1, year 2, year 3 of the strategic plan? And then what's the budgeting source? How are we going to pay for these things? So that's some of the work that I have left to do on these, but that we've started with our strategic plan.
Yeah, thank you. I mean, this is ambitious, but I'm really excited for the work. I think it's fabulous. So we look forward to hearing how it's going and how we can help and with the budget. Other comments, questions? Okay, I'm not seeing any.
All right.
Okay.
All right, moving on. MCAS. I'm going to try to get through this in a half hour. So here you see the test history since COVID. I'm not going to read the each slide for you, but you'll see how things have evolved because of COVID. It did impact the testing schedule and how comprehensive the comprehensive assessment system of the state was during COVID. Really where you'll see that is there's years where we can't do a grade 10 comparison because the test has switched so much. So you'll see comparisons for grades 3 through 8, but you won't see it for grade 10 at the high school because of the change in tests. And the state has warned us that that would not be a valid comparison to make. So that's the purpose of showing you that. To orient you to this graph, can you see my cursor when I do this?
Yes.
Okay, this is one of my favorite visual representations of scores. So when I report to you, you'll see this a lot. The yellow dot here is Brookline High School, and it's divided into quadrants. So if you're up here in this quadrant, it means you have lower growth but higher achievement. If you're down here, you have lower growth and lower achievement. Definitely don't want to be there. Over here, you have higher growth and low achievement. And up here, where we're heading, you have higher growth and higher achievement. These darkened vertical lines are because between 40 and 60 is what they consider typical growth for a student in their standard growth percentile. So you can see where we're falling. We are achieving well. We're almost in that high achievement, high growth. We just need to make a little bit more growth. And we're going to talk a little bit about some of the targets that we're going to make or that we have for doing that. But 85% of our Brookline High School students are meeting or exceeding expectations. And our average student growth percentile, remember I said 40 to 60 is average. The average student growth percentile for the high school is 57. So we're getting really close to that 60. Hopefully we'll be able to push it over the edge in the coming years. Helen?
Yeah, one quick question. I'm sorry to stop you, but there are kids who sort of top out in this, right? Who score the highest, and how do they show up in this graph?
So they would show up. This is looking at the aggregate. So Their high achievement is showing here. And if they also have high growth, because it is
Okay.
possible to have high achievement and low growth.
Yeah, that's what I'm thinking. If you're
Yeah.
at the top, it's hard to keep on going.
Yes,
You know? There's nowhere else to go to.
exactly.
But Jody, this is comparing us to a similar cohort before, right? Isn't that what growth is?
This one is not.
Oh, this one is not.
This
Okay.
one is not. And then if I completed these slides before the state released their averages, but the state average is right around here. It's usually right around the 50.
Okay. It's just always been something I've thought about. You know, if you're at the top, if you can't go any further, it looks bad. You're not growing.
So this shows us a little bit more. This is our dashboard for our 10th grade. 85% of our students were proficient. That is up 3% from the prior year. Our average scaled score, they consider a meeting expectation score to be 500. Our average scaled score is 523, and our average SGP is, as I said, 57. We are up in all of those indicators right now from where we were previously. And you can see this is this line graph here is representing our SGP. And you'll see for the past 3 years, we've been on kind of an upward trajectory, which is really nice. These bars, and this is ELA, if I didn't say that, these bars represent our achievement. You'll see here, we're growing the dark blue, which is exceeding expectations. And we're shrinking the partially meeting expectations down here by a percentage point. And the red is students that are not meeting expectations. So everything in ELA at the high school is trending in the direction that we would want to see it happen for the aggregate.
Yeah, Helen?
If I could just point one thing out, I think that red line being so small, and I don't know what the percentage, I can't do the math that quickly, but it's really gone down significantly. And that to me is really important. And it's important that the other ones have gone up. Obviously they do, because but the failing piece is something that worried me, especially in 2022, and being able to get that down, looks by half or more, is really great.
Yes.
So kudos to our teachers.
Now we'll look at math. 83% of our students were proficient in math. The average scaled score was 522. Our average SGP is down a little bit from where it was in the previous year, and it's at 55.9. But you can see our achievement here. We lost about 5% of students that were exceeding growth. It looks like they fell back into, not exceeding growth, exceeding the performance standards. It looks like they fell back into the meeting. Our partially meeting has held steady. It's been flat. And our not meeting is again smaller. So we're shrinking that red a little bit. So we can hypothesize that actually we can't, because that would be, we're doing apples and oranges. These are different cohorts of students. And here's science. Science tells a little bit of a different story, but that's okay. 77% of our students are proficient. Our average scale score is closer to the state average, or what the state expects, at 500. It's at 508. You don't get a standard growth percentile for science because the test isn't given every year. But here's some good news. You'll see that we've gone from 10% exceeding the standards to we've doubled it to 27% are exceeding standards. We've gone from 33% partially meeting to 22% partially meeting. We're under 5% for not meeting. And even though we have all these kids up here in the dark blue, we've only lost our meeting. We've only lost 2% here. So that's pretty exciting stuff. So even though these numbers may not be ideal or where we want them, as high as we want them, given who we are, and we're very proud of the high standards we hold our students to, our performance is trending in the right direction. Okay. Here is grades 3 through 8 for language arts. One of the reasons I included this chart is that I wanted to show you how closely our schools cluster together. This isn't always the case in a district where the schools are as clumped as we are here. We do have a couple of schools at the extreme. This orange is Pierce. Pierce is really hitting it out of the park with ELA. You can see that they've crossed over into that area of higher growth, high achievement. Here is FRR. Hiding here is the district as a whole. That green one is the district as a whole. So these scores are, and the state would be right about there again. So we're doing well in the aggregate for ELA, grades 3 through 8. And I kept it at grades 3 through 8. I didn't give you the individual grade analysis because I knew we could be pressed a little bit for time, and I would be happy to answer questions about individual grades. But in the aggregate, we're doing very well. However, the story changes when we start to look at subgroups and we disaggregate our data out. So the red dot that's here, those are our Asian students. This cream dot that's here are our multiracial, non-Hispanic Latino students. The bright yellow dot is our white students. This dot is our Hispanic Latino students. This dot is our African American and Black students. As you can see, there's a large gap and there's a large disparity between students that are white and Asian and students that are Hispanic or identify as Black or African American. This achievement gap is something that this is the story that we're going to tell with the data a couple of different ways today, so that we can then tell you a little bit about what it is we're going to do about it. So ELA in the I can't speak anymore. ELA in the aggregate. So 70% of our students are proficient. This is grades 3 through 8. Our average scaled score is 511. Our average SGP is 57.4, which is down about 5.4 from the previous year. If you are ELA, this is our Black and African American, you'll see we've now dropped to 48% proficiency. It's down to 2% from the previous year. The average scaled score is below the meeting expectations. It's down 1 from the previous year. And the average growth percentile has dropped 7 from the previous year. Now, if you're low income, now this doesn't take into account any race. This is just if you're low income. If you're low income, we've dropped from 70% proficient down to 39% proficient. That's up 3% from the previous year. We've dropped from 511 to 493. That's a zero net change from the prior year. And our average SGP is down 3.2 at 52.4. However, if you happen to be low income and Black African American, you go from 70% in the aggregate to only 28% of our students who are low income and Black are proficient on this test. The average scale score is 487. It is the lowest average scale score. And our average SGP is down 11.6 from the previous year at 45. This is a story that holds true through math, and we'll look at that as well. Stephen, I see you have a question.
Thanks, Jody. I really appreciate that you disaggregated this data and that you pulled out the story for low income and Black and African American students. Did you also, backing up a step, in the fall of 2021, there was a presentation by Erin Cooley that disaggregated the data that showed that that low income white students scored higher on MCAS achievement tests than higher income Black / African American students. Did you happen to disaggregate the data for this year and find the similar results? And I'm asking because I find that there is an unkillable narrative that MCAS data disaggregated by race is reducible to socioeconomic data.
Mm-hmm. And I would argue against that, just based on the fact that without that low income status, yes, our Black and African American students are performing lower than the aggregate, but not as low as when you add that low income.
Right. That was what was presented by Erin Cooley in fall of 21, and once, I think 2 years before that as well. But I would love to see updated data around this because it's a really hard narrative to dispel. I think there's a lot of people who make an assumption that it's socioeconomic at bottom, no matter what the race disaggregation says. So I would love to see as a regular feature in reports like this, disaggregated data by race and socioeconomic stratification.
We can do that.
Thank you.
Helen?
Yeah, quick question. Sorry. The second line, the ELA Black African American includes low income too, doesn't it?
It does. No, it does not. I cut it, Helen, so it does not include low income.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome. The ELA low income includes, it's just low income no matter what the race is.
So Jody, I just want to check on this. The student growth percentile is based on the cohort from the year before, or no?
No,
So-
it's based on that individual student. So the state compares them to other students with similar profiles,
Right.
and then determines the growth. So we're really comparing apples to oranges when we say, because it's an entirely different group of kids with an entirely different group of learning profiles. So the fluctuation is kind of artificial. You can't really compare it because you're talking different kids.
Okay. Is that a change?
No.
Well, it used to be you said this group of third graders, and then they followed them as they went to fourth grade. And then they said the percentile of learning was how they compared to other groups that were similar to them and whether they were higher or lower.
Yes, I'm not sure that this 11.6, what I'm not clear of is if this 11.6 represents the drop from this cohort in third grade or fourth grade or fifth grade.
Okay, thanks.
Natalia?
Yeah, I just had a clarification question based on what you said. The ELA Black African American group, the 48%, does not include ELA low income Black and African American. Therefore, if you were to include it, it would be lower.
It would be this
than
28%. Yeah.
No, if you were to include all, right? It would,
Yes.
like all Black and African American students. Can you give us that at a different date, just so we have
sure
that
can.
number? Thanks.
Absolutely. All right, let's move on. So then, did our students on IEPs and 504s improve in ELA? And here we looked at grades 3 and 5 and grades 6 through 8, because 6 through 8 is really a middle school model and 3 to 5 is really an elementary model. And what we can see is that 45% of our students on IEPs or 504s did improve on their scaled score from the previous year. 55% did not. And then what does that change look like? Did they actually change performance levels? So did they actually go from not meeting, meeting, or exceeding expectations? 9% of our students went up one performance level, 39% of our students stayed the same, and 8% of students went down one level. If we look at 6 through 8, it's very similar, but a little different. 48% of our students, their scaled score, 48% of our students on IEPs or 504s, scaled scores improved. 52% did not. 62% of our students stayed at the same level. 15% went up a level, and 18% dropped a level. Natalia, is that a new hand?
No, it's an old 10, sorry.
Okay. So as I told you, the story, though our overall proficiency levels in math are lower than our ELA proficiency levels, the story is the same, that our students are, if you are low income and Black African American, only 18% of our students that meet those two criteria are proficient, according to the MCAS in grades 3 through 8. Stark contrast from 65 if we had chosen not to disaggregate this data. You'll also see that the student growth percentile falls below that 40 to 60 average for the first time. So this would be considered low growth. And the scaled score is 477. Remember, the target for meeting expectations is 500. You can see that if you're Black, it goes from 65 to 21%. This is a little bit different than ELA. We didn't see that drastic of a drop in our ELA scores, but we are seeing it in math. And then if you're low income, it drops to 31%. And again, you see those growth percentiles, even though for the aggregate, it's not that strong, you'll see that we're starting to fall towards the low end of average. That first one was grades 3 through 5. Sorry. This is 6 through 8, but the story again isn't that different. If in the aggregate, 76% of our students are proficient, that drops off if you're African American to 26%. If you're low income, 36%. If you're low income and African American, it drops to 19%. And you can see that the standard growth percentile goes from being strong at 60 to the higher end to being right in the middle at 50.4. So did our students on IEPs improve in, or 504s improve in math? In grades 3 through 5, the answer is yes, 52% did, 48% didn't. 38% stayed at the same level, 10% went up a level, 11% dropped a level. In grades 6 through 8, this is where we see our most drastic difference in this question. Yes, 60% of our students in grades 6 through 8, their scaled score increased, 40% did not. 62% of our students stayed at the same level, 22% moved up a level, and 11% dropped a level, and 1%, which is a small n, dropped 2 levels. So they could probably went from meeting expectations to not meeting expectations.
So Jody, I hate to interrupt, but just a time check. We have about 5 minutes before Helen has to leave us. So
Okay.
Helen, do you want to still ask your question? or-
Yeah, well, just a quick comment, maybe it's a question. Do we account for years that students have been in the system? So we have a great deal of churn in
Mhm.
the system, and I'm wondering if we, part of this is certainly what we're doing, but part may be that we have new kids coming in,
It could be part of it. I didn't find a way to disaggregate the data by years in the district yet. As soon as I do, I will get that data for you. Stephen?
I just want to say, if the silence shouldn't be interpreted as indifference, but just I think we're well aware of this horrifying story, and I don't know that curriculum is where this particular meeting is where we're gonna hear solutions right now. Just want to share that.
We are not, though we
I
do.
appreciate that you're presenting this data. I think this narrative is well established, and I for one really appreciate updated data that makes it clear that this story persists until we do something about it.
And this is where Claire Galloway Jones and I are really very excited to be working together on this, because we think it's just really, really important. These are our students in science. This is grades 5 and 8 on the science MCAS. 75% of our students were proficient. Our average scale score was 513, and you don't get an SGP for science. And you'll see here, we are decreasing our red. We've gone from 6% to 4%. We're decreasing our gray slightly. We've gone from 22 to 21%, from a high of 27% in 2021. We're up 56% into our kids that are meeting, and we're at 18% for our students that are exceeding. This is our grade 5 and 8 MCAS science for our African American students. Again, you see 17% of our students, as opposed to 75%, are proficient. The average scaled score drops to 490. You can see here, we did decrease the red by 2%. We increased the gray by 67%. The light blue has decreased significantly. However, we do have a small increase in students exceeding. So a preliminary, what are we doing about this? We are identifying focus students for each school that fall into the subgroups. So those students that are Black, African American, low income. These students are going to be the focus of conversations with building leaders, curriculum coordinators, METCO, and Steps to Success to see what it is that we're doing for these students. We're working to continuously strengthen our Tier 1 instruction for all students so that it's culturally and linguistically responsive to our students. And then in collaboration with the stakeholders, we're going to design scaffolds and supports to increase the likelihood of success for these students. My hope is that by having focus students, we'll be able to put a face and a name together, and that these numbers, instead of talking about numbers, we're talking about actual children, and we're talking about our students. So this is a first step of many that we're going to do to try to decrease this achievement gap between for our students. Yeah, and with that, I will take questions.
Natalia?
So I appreciate the effort to, put a face to the students, but I do want to make sure that you're thinking about the potential of stigmatizing students, of creating sort of further narratives of who is underperforming and not really focusing on the teaching and the curriculum, so somehow balancing that out, I think would be really important. And if I'm correct, the science drop year on year was huge. And I don't know if there was something happened and trying to figure that out, or if that was just it looked like it was a drop of 24 percentage points, or did I misread that in the slide before? But it might be interesting to figure out what happened there year on year. Thank you.
Thanks.
Yeah, okay. Other thoughts from others? Yeah, Stephen?
I guess I'll just add that I don't see disproportionality in academic achievement to be meaningfully differentiated from disproportionality in all of the other areas in PSB. So I really appreciate the updated data on this, and I appreciate this slide in particular, that you're drilling down into activities that can mitigate academic disproportionality. But I think it's a level higher than academic disproportionality, but disproportionality in SEL and discipline and SPED referrals in absolutely every area in Brookline, as we've seen over the past year's worth of presentations. So I just think it's to me, we can't expect this to be on OTL shoulders. This has to be a systemic effort that to me has to be linked to Dr. Guillory's overall strategy, which has to have an overall equity strategy, particularly focused on racial equity. That's my little soapbox. Thank you.
Thanks, Stephen.
Yeah, thank you, Stephen. I might add that one of the pieces I don't see, Jody, is the relationship building and the feeling of belonging and identifying like people, on the staff with the students. So I would encourage us to think about that as well. I think my understanding is that our METCO folks are doing some really good work with families even before school opened. And so again, meeting the needs of the families and the students where they are would be part of this as well.
Absolutely.
Stephen, is your hand up again, or was that from before? Okay. Anyone else? We are exactly at 4:30, which is amazing. So I didn't give you an extra few minutes, Helen. Jody, thank you so much for this. That was a lot of work for you to talk for an hour and a half. I appreciate all that you did, and it was very clear. We know that what you have presented today will take many, many months of, looking at it and taking it apart and understanding it. but as Stephen has said, it's nothing really too new to us. And I'm glad you're on board with the team that you have and getting ready to really take a hard look at what we have to do. I will just say to all our attendees, we have run out of time, but know, of course, that we're all just an email away. And on any of these topics, you can be in touch with us to let us know what your thoughts are and what your questions might be. Jody, do you want to have the last word for tonight?
I just want to thank the committee for being such a captive and great audience with wonderful questions, giving me food for thought and ideas for moving forward. I appreciate it. And, you know, this, to echo Suzanne, your words, this is not a problem that's going to go away overnight. It's not a new problem, but I also don't think it's unconquerable. I think we can make inroads into it. And I'm thrilled with the OTL team and to have Claire on board as my partner in this work and standing arm in arm, because neither she nor I can do this alone. And even together, we're a pretty powerful force, but we're not that powerful. So thank you. I appreciate everybody's words.
So just a reminder, you're going to talk about world language, the program review on September 28th.
Yes.
Perhaps we'll get a little bit of an update about the class sizes, if there's been any movement and what might be done or not done. But that would be helpful for us to know.
Excellent.
And you know, this is September, so this is kind of kicking off the year in terms of the work we're going to do as a subcommittee and how we can be helpful and pushing forward your agenda. So all of these topics will be visited again many times throughout the year. So thank you for that.
Thank you.
Okay, we will see everybody at least September 28th. Okay, thank you so much.
Bye, everyone.
Bye.